Sierra Preston didn't expect her summer to begin with a tray of champagne glasses tipping over and nearly soaking a man in a three-piece suit. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, scrambling to catch the last glass as it teetered on the silver tray. The man didn't move. He just looked down at her 6-foot-something, sculpted jaw, dark hair, and eyes that made her forget for a second that she was working for minimum wage at the Lakeshore Grand Resort. "It's fine," he said in a low voice, brushing a drop of champagne off his cuff. "You all right?" "Yeah, just first day nerves," Sierra muttered, cheeks burning. She adjusted her uniform and tried not to stare too obviously at his tailored suit. He didn't look like a guest. He looked like he owned the entire place because he did, but she didn't know that yet. He gave her a nod, then disappeared into the elevator without another word. Sierra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She had no clue she'd just nearly soaked the CEO of the entire resort chain. Sierra had taken the summer job as a server at the resort to escape the mess of her last relationship and the suffocating pressure of figuring out her life. She'd left her tiny apartment, packed up her car, and drove hours to the edge of the lake just to feel like she could breathe again. All she wanted was a peaceful summer, not to fall on her face literally in front of a man who looked like he belonged on the cover of a finance magazine. By day 3, she was getting the hang of things, sort of. She balanced trays without spilling, smiled at every guest, and tried to ignore how often her thoughts drifted to the mystery man from the elevator. "You mean Oliver?" her manager, Tasha, said when Sierra finally asked. "Oliver Osborne, he's the CEO, owns the whole chain." Sierra blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope, he's here for the week. Board meetings, probably some investor thing, but don't get any ideas, he's serious. Like billionaire serious." Billionaire, Sierra's chest tightened. So not only had she nearly dumped champagne on a guest, she'd done it to the billionaire who owned the place. Perfect. Oliver Osborne sat in the corner of the resort's private lounge, scrolling through a report on his tablet, but his mind kept drifting. Back to the girl with the tray. The way she'd flushed, how steady her hands were even when she was panicked. Most of the staff avoided him like he was royalty. She hadn't flinched well, okay, she'd panicked a little, but there was something real about her, too real. He didn't have time for distractions. He was here to finalize the deal on the new resort opening in Italy, not flirt with staff. But every time he passed the lobby or dined in the restaurant, Sierra was there, working, smiling, laughing with guests. Her hair always tied back, her eyes always scanning the room like she cared about every little detail. So when he caught her on break one afternoon, sitting by the staff dock with her feet in the water, he didn't walk past. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up, startled. "You don't have a meeting somewhere?" He gave her a half smile. "Cancelled it." She raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He sat beside her on the dock, his slacks and leather shoes wildly out of place next to her bare feet and rolled-up pants. "I never got your name," he said. "Sierra." "Sierra Preston, Oliver Osborne," she grinned. "Yeah, I figured that out. You're not intimidated," she shrugged. "You're just a guy who almost got soaked in champagne." He laughed, actually laughed. It felt too easy, too good. From that moment on, Sierra tried not to notice how often Oliver showed up where she was. A quiet seat in the restaurant while she worked. A walk by the lake at the same time she was on break. Conversations that started casual and turned deeper about books, about family, about the pressure of pretending to have it all together. She didn't ask about his money. She didn't care about the suits, the cars, the penthouse suite he stayed in. She liked the way he looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense. Like she wasn't just another girl in a uniform. One afternoon, she found a small box tucked inside her staff locker. Inside was a delicate necklace, silver with a tiny opal charm, no note. "Just a glance from Oliver at dinner that night and a quiet, 'It reminded me of you.' She wore it every day after that, but not everyone was thrilled. 'You need to be careful,' Tasha warned quietly one evening. 'People are talking about you and him.' Sierra stiffened. "We're not, I know." "I believe you, but they don't. And if HR finds out?" Sierra nodded, but her heart sank. She hadn't planned for this. She hadn't planned for the way her stomach flipped every time Oliver walked into a room, or how warm her chest felt when he asked about her day like it actually mattered. She hadn't planned to fall for him, and she definitely hadn't planned on him falling for her too. Late one evening, after the restaurant had closed and the moon reflected off the lake like glass, she found Oliver waiting by the dock again. No suit. Just jeans, a gray sweater, and a look in his eyes that made her heart race. "I leave in 2 days," he said. She blinked. "Right, of course. I wasn't supposed to stay this long." She looked down at her hands. "Then why did you?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you," her breath caught. "I've been trying to stay away. I thought it was just a distraction, but it's not." His eyes searched hers. "I don't want to leave without telling you how I feel, Oliver." "I'm falling in love with you, Sierra." She stared at him, every nerve firing at once, and then without thinking she kissed him right there under the stars. On the dock. With the lake quiet behind them and the world disappearing for a second, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. But it did, and it felt like the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. Sierra didn't sleep that night. She lay on the narrow staff cot in her dorm-style room, the kiss replaying over and over in her mind like a movie she couldn't turn off. Not just the kiss, but the way Oliver had looked at her before it. Like she was something rare. Like he'd already made up his mind. By morning, the high of it had burned off into a low simmer of anxiety. She pulled her hair back, tied her apron, and tried to focus on the breakfast shift. But every time a guest asked for coffee, her hands trembled just enough to make her worry. Not because she was nervous about the job, because she didn't know what this meant now. What last night meant. Oliver hadn't said anything else after they'd kissed. He just held her face for a beat longer, pressed his forehead to hers, and whispered goodnight. And now she had no idea if today she was supposed to act like it hadn't happened or like everything had changed. She didn't see him at breakfast. Not at the Lakeview corner he usually occupied, not in the boardroom hallway, not even at the private terrace where she occasionally delivered lunch trays for the execs. By late afternoon, she started to wonder if he'd already left. Maybe he'd said goodbye without saying it. But then, just before the shift change, her name was called over the staff radio. "Sierra Preston, report to the front desk. Guest request." She froze. No one ever requested her by name. When she got there, the concierge handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a single sheet of stationery, Villa 316. 7 o'clock, dress code, whatever makes you feel like yourself. No name, no signature, just the room number, but she knew exactly who had sent it. Her heart thundered as she made her way back to her room, the note still clutched in her hand. She stared at her closet for a long time, not because she had so many options, but because none of them felt like they belonged in a billionaire's villa. Eventually, she pulled on a pale blue blouse she'd nearly left behind when she left the city, the one her sister called her lucky shirt. She paired it with black jeans and flats, simple but clean. Real. At 6:58, she stood outside Villa 316, palms damp. The door opened before she could knock. Oliver stood there, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, a quiet look in his eyes. "You came," he said. "You invited me." "Still," he said. "You could have said no." "I thought about it." He stepped aside to let her in. The villa was nothing like the public areas of the resort. It was warm, lived in, filled with low jazz music and the scent of rosemary and lemon. A small table was set near the balcony, candles flickering between 2 plates. "You cooked?" she asked, surprised. He shrugged. "I don't get to cook much. Figured I'd try." She lifted a brow. "You really made this?" "Okay," he admitted. "I prepped the pasta. The staff helped with the rest, but I stirred things." She laughed, tension easing from her shoulders. They sat across from each other, the lake shimmering outside the floor-to-ceiling glass doors. He poured her a glass of wine, white and crisp. She studied him. "You've been avoiding me all day." "I needed to think," he said, "about what I said. And what I meant." Sierra traced the rim of her glass. "And I meant all of it," he said. But I don't want you to feel cornered. If this is too much, if I'm crossing a line, I'll step back. She looked at him, really looked. You're not crossing a line. I just don't know what happens now. I don't either, he said honestly. I didn't expect any of this, she nodded slowly. I came here to get away from everything, not to start something I couldn't finish. What are you afraid of? She hesitated. That this, whatever this is, won't survive outside this place, that it's just a summer thing, that I'll end up hurt again. He leaned forward. I'm not interested in summer flings, Sierra. I don't want a distraction. I want something real, her breath hitched. But your life is not small. No, he said. But I'm tired of people who only see the size of it. You look me in the eye, that's rare. I don't want to lose that. The silence between them stretched, not awkward, just full. Finally, she said, I don't know how to do this. Then let's figure it out. Together. That night after dinner, they sat on the balcony, knees brushing, staring out at the dark water. He didn't try to kiss her again. He just reached out and laced his fingers through hers. But outside the villa, things were shifting. Word was spreading through the staff halls. Whispers. Glances, and in the main office, Oliver's assistant, Claire, stared at a printed itinerary. The Italy trip had been moved up. He was now scheduled to leave in 48 hours. She tapped her pen against the paper, then picked up her phone. I need to speak to Mr. Osborne, she said. He's deviating from protocol again. Back in the villa, Sierra rested her head on Oliver's shoulder. She didn't know yet how complicated things were about to get, and she definitely didn't know that someone was already working to tear them apart. Sierra stood outside the staff dining hall, her hands damp from rinsing plates when her phone buzzed in her back pocket. Not her personal one, it was the clunky staff-issued phone used for internal communication. A message lit up the screen. She read it twice, jaw tightening. She'd been reassigned. Instead of working the lakefront event that evening, a wine tasting she'd been looking forward to, she'd been pulled to assist housekeeping on the far side of the resort. It was odd. She'd never worked housekeeping, and she knew for a fact they weren't short-staffed. She headed straight to her manager's office. Tasha, did you pull me from the wine event? Tasha didn't look up from her clipboard. It came from higher up. Higher up. After a pause, Tasha sighed. Claire, Mr. Osborne's assistant. Sierra's brow furrowed. Why? I don't know, Tasha said carefully, but she's been asking questions about you, about him. Maybe it's just a precaution, maybe not. Sierra didn't say anything. She just nodded and walked out, but her chest burned. By the time she reached the guest suites on the east wing, her mind was spinning. She didn't know what game Oliver's assistant was playing, but it was clear she'd noticed something, and she wasn't happy about it. She spent the rest of the afternoon scrubbing sinks and changing linens, her body moving on autopilot. When she finally returned to her room, she found another envelope on her pillow. No name, just a note. Meet me by the old boathouse. 10 o'clock. She didn't hesitate. When she arrived, the stars were out and the lake was glass smooth again. Oliver stood near the edge of the dock, hands in his pockets, looking out at the water. He turned when he heard her steps. Thought you might not come. I almost didn't, Sierra said. Your assistant's trying to get rid of me, he exhaled slowly. I know. You knew and didn't say anything. I found out this morning. I had Claire pulled from staff decisions, but she's been with me for years. She's loyal and territorial. And you let her decide who gets punished for your feelings, his expression shifted. That's not what this is. Sierra stepped closer. Then tell me what it is, because I'm being reassigned, watched, isolated. And I didn't ask for any of this. He took a step toward her. I didn't want to bring you into the spotlight. I was trying to protect you. From what? He paused. From the world I live in, from people like Claire who think they know what's best for my time, my schedule, my life. I've spent years building this company, but somewhere along the way I let other people start managing more than my calendar. Sierra folded her arms. And now they're managing me. No, he said. Not anymore. I've already made the calls. You're not being reassigned again. I don't want special treatment. You're not getting it, he interrupted. You're getting fairness, something you weren't getting before. They stood in silence for a beat. The cicadas hummed in the distance. A soft breeze rustled the reeds near the boathouse. Then she looked up at him. "How long until you leave?" "Tomorrow morning." Her chest tightened. "So that's it?" "No," he said. "That's not it." He reached into his jacket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She took it and opened it slowly. It was a plane ticket. One way to Florence. "I have a villa there," he said. "It's quiet, private. I'll be working there most of the summer. I want you to come." She stared at the ticket, disbelief written across her features. "I'm not asking you to give up your life," he said, "but I want to see where this goes. I want more time with you. Away from the resort, away from the noise." "You really think this makes sense?" "No," he admitted. "But nothing about this has made sense since the moment you walked into the elevator with that tray. And I've never wanted something irrational more than I want this." She looked up at him, heart thudding. "I can't just disappear," she said. "I still have responsibilities here. I still need to figure things out." "I know," he said. "That's why it's an open invitation. No deadline, no pressure. Just come if you want to." She folded the ticket carefully, tucking it into her back pocket. "I need time," she said. He nodded. "Then take it." They didn't kiss. He didn't reach for her. He just looked at her like he was memorizing every detail. When Sierra returned to her room that night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, Oliver was gone, but the ticket was still in her pocket. Burning like a question she wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Later that week, the resort buzzed with rumors. Staff whispered about sudden changes, about Claire being reassigned to corporate headquarters, about a new consultant arriving to oversee operations. Sierra didn't participate. She kept her head down, worked her shifts, and tried to quiet the ache that came every time she passed the villa where they'd had dinner. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, during a stormy night that swept across the lake with sudden violence, that something shifted. Sierra was in the main lobby, helping guests arrange transportation after a power outage had knocked out the shuttle service. She was soaked, exhausted, and halfway through coordinating a backup generator when she turned and froze. Standing at the entrance, rain dripping from his coat, was Oliver. He met her eyes, breathless. His hair was damp, his collar crooked, his suitcase still in hand. "You didn't take the ticket," he said. "I wasn't ready." "I thought I could wait," he said, "but I couldn't. I flew back this morning. I've been driving for hours. I got caught in the storm." "I don't care." He stepped closer. "I told myself I'd give you space, but I don't want space, I want you." Sierra stared at him, heart pounding. "You came back in the middle of a storm to tell me that?" "I came back because I realized I don't want Italy if you're not in it." She didn't speak. Just walked straight into his arms, and for the first time in days, everything made sense. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the resort washed clean and quiet. Sierra stood barefoot on the balcony of her staff housing, watching the lake mist rise in soft swirls. Her hair was still damp from the night before, but she hadn't bothered drying it. She couldn't stop replaying what he'd said. "I don't want Italy if you're not in it." She hadn't answered him, not in words. She'd stepped into his arms, let herself feel it, let herself want it. But feelings weren't the same as decisions. And Oliver, he was a man who lived in a world of decisions. Clear, powerful, irreversible ones. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find a folded note on the ground. No envelope, just her name in the same handwriting as before. She unfolded it slowly. Breakfast, 1 hour, the rooftop above the spa. She looked up and down the hallway, but there was no one there, just the quiet hum of the vents and the faint scent of rain. When she arrived at the rooftop, the early sun had broken through the fog, casting the terrace in soft gold. A table had been set with coffee, warm croissants, and fresh fruit. Real china. Silver cutlery. A linen tablecloth that fluttered slightly in the breeze. Oliver stood by the railing, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the collar of his shirt open in a way that made him look more human than she was used to seeing. "You found it," he said without turning. "I almost didn't. But you did." She walked over, eyeing the setup. "You know this is staff-only access. I called in a favor. One of the maintenance guys owes me from a poker game in Monaco." She raised an eyebrow. "You play poker, I win poker," he corrected. "Usually." She tried not to smile. So what is this? A goodbye breakfast. That depends on you. He turned finally, and the light caught his face just right, worn, hopeful, unsure in a way that made her ribs tighten. I don't want to pressure you, he said. But I do need to know if this is something we're building or something I'm chasing on my own. Sierra sat down, brushing a few crumbs off the linen. You said you didn't want Italy without me, she said carefully. But that's not how life works, is it? You go. Whether or not I follow. I want to go with you, not ahead of you. You're used to getting what you want. He didn't deny it. I am, but I've also had to learn what's worth wanting. She met his eyes. And you, his voice was steady, no hesitation, no performance. Sierra looked down at her hands. I'm scared. I know, not just of leaving, of losing myself in your world, of not recognizing who I am when I get there. Oliver sat, reaching across the table but not touching her. You don't have to become anyone else to be with me. I don't want a version of you that fits into my life. I want the version that challenges it. You say that now. I'll say it every day if you'll let me. They ate in silence after that, the kind of silence that felt full rather than empty. When the plates were cleared, he stood and held out a hand. Walk with me, she took it. They walked down the staff paths behind the spa, where the garden bloomed in wild clusters and the stones were still wet from rain. Neither of them spoke until they reached the far end of the property, where a narrow path led to the cliffs above the lake. He stopped there. I bought this land last year, he said. We're going to build a retreat here, something smaller, more personal. I've been planning it for months. She looked out at the view. It's beautiful. It'll take time, he said, but I want it to be something that matters, not for profit, for people. She glanced at him. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to be part of it. Sierra blinked. What do you mean? I want you to help design it. Build something that reflects the real people who come here, not just the elite clients. You see what others miss. You understand the heart of this place better than anyone I've met. She stared at him. You want to hire me. I want to create something with you, something lasting. She shook her head, laughing softly. You're ridiculous. And yet, here we are. She looked out at the lake again. The sun was higher now, warming the stone beneath her shoes. Say I do this, she said. Say I help you build it. What happens after? We keep building, not just the resort. He turned to face her fully. Then we build a life, her breath caught. I don't have a plan, she admitted. Good, he said, because neither do I, not for this, but I know what I want. And I'm willing to fight for it. For you, she stepped closer, eyes searching his. You don't think this is crazy? I think it's the first thing that's ever made sense. She didn't answer right away. Just stood there, the wind catching the hem of her shirt, the scent of wet stone and cedar all around them. Then, finally, she said, I'll come to Italy. But not to follow you, I'll come to meet you there. He smiled, eyes bright. That's all I need. Later that evening, the resort buzzed again, but not with rumors. With music, laughter, and the scent of grilled peaches and rosemary drifting up from the lakefront. A private dinner had been arranged on the dock, just for two. No staff, no guests. Just string lights and the soft sound of water lapping against the wood. Sierra stepped out onto the dock in a navy dress she hadn't worn before, simple but elegant. Oliver turned as she approached, stunned into silence for the first time she'd seen. You look, don't say it, she teased. Just pull out the chair. He did. They ate slowly, without rush, the way people do when they know they have time. When the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned violet, Oliver stood and held out a hand. She took it. They danced barefoot on the dock. No music but the rhythm of their own laughter, the occasional splash of water and the low hum of crickets. At one point he leaned in, brushing her hair back. You changed everything, he whispered. She kissed him, slow and certain. No, she said. You stopped running. I just happened to be in the way. Months later, the villa in Italy would see its first guests. And beside the olive trees and stone pathways, a new wing would rise, designed by a woman who once served drinks at her resort and fell in love with the man who owned it. But tonight, there was only the dock, the stars, and the beginning of something neither of them would ever call temporary again. The sun filtered through gauzy curtains as Sierra woke to the scent of espresso and something warm and sweet baking. The walls were stone-washed white, the window cracked open to let in the soft sounds of the Tuscan countryside. She reached across the crisp linen sheets, finding the other side of the bed empty but still warm. A quiet smile touched her lips. She pulled on a soft cotton robe and padded barefoot through the villa, following the scent to the open-concept kitchen. Oliver stood at the stove, barefoot too, wearing a navy shirt rolled to the elbows and holding a wooden spoon like he might actually be qualified to use it. "You're cooking again." Sierra leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her voice still husky from sleep. He turned, eyes lighting up. "Technically, I'm warming. The bakery in town has this unbelievable almond cake. I thought I'd serve it with espresso and pretend I made it." She walked over, pressing a kiss to his cheek. "Convincing, you should open a restaurant." "I'd rather open something with you." She froze for a beat, then gave him a knowing glance. "You're serious?" He set the spoon down, wiping his hands. "I've been thinking about it, not a restaurant, a retreat for artists, writers, people who need a place to breathe. We have the land, we have the space, you have the vision, I have the capital. We could build something lasting here." She blinked. "You want us to live here. I want us to build a life here, not just pass through, and I want that life with you." Sierra leaned back on the counter, her robe sleeve brushing the marble. "It's only been a few months. I'm not measuring it in months, I'm measuring it in clarity, and I've never been clearer." She studied him, her gaze steady, then let out a soft breath. "You're impossible. You like that about me." She shook her head, smiling despite herself. "I do." That afternoon, they drove through the countryside in Oliver's vintage convertible, a soft breeze tangling in Sierra's hair. The hills rolled endlessly, dotted with olive groves and vineyards. They weren't heading anywhere in particular, just driving, just being. As they passed a crumbling stone chapel, Sierra pointed out an arched gate covered in wisteria. "That's beautiful." Oliver slowed the car and pulled over without a word. They approached the gate, stepping through into a quiet garden overgrown and wild but still breathtaking. The chapel's doors were unlocked, the interior long abandoned but filled with soft light through stained glass windows. Sierra turned in a slow circle, her voice hushed. "This place feels like it remembers something." Oliver's hand found hers. "Would you ever get married here?" She laughed softly. "Are you proposing?" "Not yet," he said, "but I'm asking questions." She looked at him, eyes wide. "You're serious." "I'm always serious with you." They drove back in silence, the kind that felt sacred. That night, they sat on the villa's rooftop terrace, lanterns glowing around them, and watched the stars appear one by one. Sierra curled into his side, her head on his shoulder. "Your life used to seem so far away from mine." He kissed her forehead. "It was. But I didn't want to stay in that life alone." She turned to face him, her voice quiet. "I think I'm ready to start something permanent." His hand found hers. "Then let's build it." 6 months later, the artist retreat opened its doors. A restored farmhouse with open-air studios, walking trails, and a communal kitchen where guests shared stories over wine and fresh bread. Sierra ran the creative programs, welcoming painters, writers, and musicians from all over the world. Oliver handled infrastructure quietly, always deferring to her when it came to the heart of the place. They found a rhythm. Woke up with the sun, worked side by side, and ate dinner beneath the olive trees. In the evenings, they danced barefoot in the courtyard, the sound of a violin drifting from one of the guest rooms. One morning, as they walked through the nearby market, Oliver paused beside a jewelry stall, picking up a simple gold ring shaped like a laurel branch. Sierra raised a brow. "Planning something?" He held it out. "Marry me, not for the spectacle, not for the headlines, just because I can't imagine a life where I don't wake up next to you every morning." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." They married 3 weeks later in the chapel with the wisteria-covered gate. Only 10 guests attended. No press. No photographers, just laughter, wildflowers, and vows whispered beneath stained glass. At the reception, held under a canopy of string lights in the retreat's garden, Oliver stood beside her and lifted a glass. She walked into my life carrying a tray of champagne and spilled half of it on my suit, and I've been grateful every day since. Sierra laughed, eyes shining. You deserved it. He leaned in, brushing his lips against hers. And I deserve you. They spent their honeymoon in a quiet village on the Amalfi Coast, where they turned off their phones and lived by the tides. By the time they returned, the retreat had a waiting list of over a year and a growing reputation as a sanctuary for the lost and the dreaming. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Sierra stood in the garden watching new guests arrive, her fingers resting lightly on her stomach. Oliver came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You told them about the baby yet? Not yet, she said. Maybe tomorrow. For now, I just want this moment. He kissed her temple. We have all the time in the world. And they did. In a villa built on love and second chances, surrounded by the hum of creation and the scent of lavender on the breeze, they crafted a life not of luxury but of meaning. Not just lovers but partners, not just a romance but a home together. Always.